Dear Reddit, what is the grossest thing you ever done? Piece by piece, I pulled out the rotting corpse of a calf that had died near the end of a cow's pregnancy. It had been rotting inside her. I knew something was off right away, but things went from bad to worse when I put chains on the 2 front legs to pull, and both legs detached from the corpse, and I fell on my ass with the legs landing on me. Next step was sticking my arm up there and pulling the pieces out. And the smell was the worst smell I've ever experienced. And being on a farm, you smell some bad stuff, but nothing approaches this. I once cut into a cow's mammary abscess, and instead of it just pouring out, it blew sideways and straight into my mouth and eyes. I can still smell it thinking of it. Trigger, child loss. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. This also happens with human babies who are born after being left in too long after they die. Not as horrific as coming out in pieces, but I had a friend who was pregnant with a baby who had a fatal chromosomal defect. She carried almost to term before he passed away in utero, and they induced labor. She had been in the hospital for a few days at that point, and kept trying to tell them he had stopped moving, and she was sure he had passed, finally convinced them to do a scan to check. She said when they handed him to her, he smelled rotten. He had clearly been gone for a while by the time he was born. I could tell just from the pictures she showed me, but I can't imagine being handed my baby and smelling death. Breaks my heart just thinking about what she went through. I was a funeral home apprentice in Washington during my college years. One time, we had this really obese woman come through our establishment. For those of you that don't normally cremate someone, there are vats beneath the retort, oven, that catches body fat and other liquids. Well, basically, I neglected to empty the vat and started cremating the woman. The vats overflowed, leaving human body fat all over the floor. I had to clean it up. Cleaned up a suicide scene, 30 gunshot through the mouth. I have also done this. I did not think it was gross, however. Sad and necessary. An official cleanup crew came through after because I was not able to get all of the blood out of the cracks in the wood floor. There were also contractors hired to cut out and replace the square of drywall where the bullet hole was. This was my niece's father. He was mentally unwell. My niece was 7M old and sleeping in her crib in the next room. He did it in front of her mother as an apology for being a piece of shit. So fucked and sad. I had to respond on a shotgun under the chin once. Guy dropped his kids off at his ex-wife's house, sat down on her front stoop and pulled the trigger. He was without a face, just a huge cavern where the front 3/4 of his head should have been. But he was still alive. Not for long, but he was alive when we got him to the hospital. My own personal worst was when I was working in OD in the back of the ambulance, doing chest compressions. I started to say something to my medic when the patient projectile vomited into my mouth, and my natural instinct caused me to swallow some of it. Either helping hold open my wife's emergency C-section incision, or being the new guy who got to jet out the sewer main clog just below the junction, glad they had a safety rope on me to haul me up from the pit when it filled up. I had an accident. The bug flew into my nose. For a moment I forgot that there were cars around, and I was so focused on blowing it out until I crashed into a car. My helmet flew out, and I rolled a few meters away from my bike. I was still trying to blow it out when I stopped rolling LOL. I have a phobia that bugs could crawl up to my brain from my nostrils. I've had to do a lot of gross things, and this isn't the worst, but it's pretty bad. I worked in an animal shelter, and part of my job was sending in animals that have to be checked for rabies. You only send the head. The state prefers that you also wash the head, and if you're feeling really generous, douse it with flea and tick spray. So this uppity rich kid decides to start feeding the raccoons that are hanging out by his pool. This eventually leads to him trying to cuddle with one of them, which then leads to him being bitten. After that, I believe, he kicked it into the pool and then somehow got it out and bashed it to death. Note: I do not like this guy and have zero sympathy for him. After he murders the raccoon who would not reciprocate his love, he throws it away. Then his bite gets infected, and the doctor tells him that if the raccoon can't be tested, then he'll have to have the shots. The deceased raccoon has been sitting in a garbage bag for 5 days in over 100-degree temps. So we dig the raccoon out that is at the bottom of a trash bag filled with rotted food and house trash. It's pretty much decomposed, but God, the stench. And the maggots. We take it back to the shelter and decide better to remove its head outside so we aren't trapped inside with him and all his little friends. My partner and I are taking turns dry heaving and holding the water hose. We were trying to wash off as many maggots as possible. We could tell that the raccoon wasn't going to be testable. I could see what was left of its brain through its eye sockets, but we are required to at least send it. My partner is like, no way, I'm not doing this, and finally I cave. I tell her to just keep rinsing off the maggots and I'll remove the head. So I hold my breath. She stops the rinsing. I take my scalpel and run up to it and make a few cuts, then run away, dry heave, and she resumes rinsing. The skin is also literally washing away as she rinses, just falling off. We repeat this about 10 times until it's done. She looks at me and tells me I have the biggest balls ever. I look at her like I'm pretty sure you are aware that I'm a woman, but thanks for the compliment, I guess. The raccoon was not able to be tested, and he had to get the shots. I hope they hurt, and he got a nasty scar of his massive cruelty and stupidity. I can still smell that dead raccoon. Ate too much at a Chinese buffet, something didn't sit right. Volcano shat all over my GFS bathroom. It hit the floor, the shower, the toilet, my shorts, everything. It was my second time meeting her father, and I turned his bathroom into a truck stop outhouse. For more deets as to how it got everywhere, she was in the shower while I was writhing on the floor trying to hold it in. She just has to take the world's longest shower, but she didn't know I was suffering, and I was too embarrassed to say something. As soon as she got out, I darted into the bathroom and literally could not make the few seconds to get my shorts off and sit. So it just shot out. I can't even tell you how it got to some of the places it did. It was like a sewage pipe burst. After I didn't make it, I just sat on the toilet for like 10 minutes wondering if I should just die of shame. Finally, after she and her dad were like, "Bro, you good?" I asked for my phone. She passed it through the door and I texted, "So I just shit my pants. Amazing. It's everywhere." I've embalmed and cremated some pretty disgusting bodies. Grabbing someone's leg and having the tissue slide off, that's up there. I've pulled some pretty rancid bodies out of the lake. Autopsies are pretty gross, really. And OP's mom. When I was 9, I had a sleepover with a girl from school. I shit in her shower and stomped it down the drain because I had too much anxiety to shit in the toilet and didn't want her to hear me. I didn't realize until it was too late that hot water and shit are not a very nice combination, and the entire house was filled with fumes of steaming feces. I think I blocked the rest of that night out from trauma because I don't remember a thing beyond that.